Hey everyone, welcome to another episode here on YouTube. I am joined again by Olle over at Hacking Chinese, works for Skritter too, but today we are coming in and we're going to be recapping the Hacking Chinese challenge. First of all, like Olle, we did it.
Yeah.
How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I had this 1,000-character queue that I've been working on for like a year, and I did it.
Gongsi, congratulations.
Thanks.
In order to kind of kick this off and recap here, like let's dig into the community. For me, it was super exciting. I don't participate in a lot of your challenges, but I think now I'm going to. Like I had a lot of fun. And so do you have any numbers for us in terms of like, how did the community do? How many signups did you have for your challenge? How many people would you consider active?
This time we had 121 signups. And of course, there are lots of people who sign up and, they have the ambition to start and then they get sidetracked by something or forget about it or something else. So we had maybe half of those that were active in some way, that had like reported progress. And we had a number of people who were, studied quite actively. And we had several people who came close to or over 100 hours.
Wow.
So that's a lot.
Yeah. When I was, reporting my own progress every single day, I was quite impressed with what some of the, people in the Hacking Chinese community were doing. I mean, really just full-time students studying Chinese, which is awesome to see. It's super exciting. It really like brought me back to, when we were in grad school and studying every single day.
Yeah. when you could actually invest all your time in learning Chinese and not anything else.
Yes, absolutely.
So we had, just for, if you're curious, we had roughly 40 people who studied more than 5 hours. So that's kind of a minimum bar for being active. So
excellent. And in total, with all the active participants, how does this challenge compare to other challenges that you've run in the past in terms of vocabulary challenges?
I mean, challenges come and go, and some of them are very popular and some of them are not. It's partly related to like how much, we engage with the challenge, like I did and you did a lot for this one. So we got a lot of hours logged. The total is over 1,000 hours, 1,083.
Wow.
And that's across these 100 people. So that's a lot.
Yeah.
And
like everyone that did participate in the challenge, if you're watching right now, give yourselves a pat on the back. Over 1,000 hours is incredibly impressive, especially given the fact that what you said, there were about 40 people that were truly active, reporting 5 or more hours. So
there have been, it's not the most popular challenge ever, but the only challenges that have been more popular are listening and reading. This was meant to be a vocabulary challenge. Now, many people logged other studying activities that were related. So it's not like it's not only people writing characters for like 100 hours.
Sure.
But for the other challenges like listening and reading, it's easier to log a larger number of hours, right? I mean, you can listen to several hours of audio per day without like, you need to focus, but it's doable. But I could never spend 3 hours a day, say, writing characters or something like that. So this is very good. It's very impressive.
Yeah, a vocabulary challenge is a very active kind of challenge, especially if you're doing, you need to be engaging with the vocabulary. So it's not really technically like reading, it's not listening, it's really that vocabulary element of it. So these kinds of numbers, when I saw them, were quite impressive. I feel a little bit bad, like one of the users, I was like, oh my gosh, you did so many hours in a day. Like, are you sure that you're doing vocabulary? Just want to make sure. And sure enough, they were, which was even more impressive. So yeah, overall, I just think like it blew my mind beyond expectations. Like as Skritter, representative, I was super impressed with everything that was going on. In terms of the community, we did reach out at the end of the challenge. You reached out and you asked for some kind of feedback and comments on the challenge itself.
We heard back from a number of people, and most of course, maybe a bit of selection bias here, of course, because people who are active kind of by definition like the challenges, otherwise they wouldn't be active. But it's a way of focusing on something that you normally don't focus on. And I think this is especially true maybe if you get up to an intermediate or even advanced level, that you have all these things you feel that you ought to do, but having a challenge that focuses on one of them kind of gives you an excuse, as it were, to kind of ignore the other things and actually get something done. it's so easy to, put things off and not do anything. Like for me, for example, I didn't do much. Well, I did some maintenance in Skritter, but I didn't attack my large pile of flashcards there for a while. But having this kind of challenge, pushed me to actually doing it. And we heard that from several people. Then, of course, we heard also from people who maybe struggled with some things or had a few questions, and we can maybe get back to them in a bit. So, but Jake, how did it go for you? I mean, how did you personally do? What was your goal, in case people don't remember from the introduction video, and how did you do?
So my goal for the challenge, I think at the time it was a pretty rough estimate. When I ended up signing up for the challenge and enrolling, I set a goal of 15 hours. And I actually had to do a little bit of a push at the end. I think my last day, the very final day, I did 3 Pomodoro technique kind of, I time boxed myself 25 minutes each to ensure that I would go over my goal. So I was pretty close the entire time. I'm very consistent studying. What I found with the challenge was I was getting my reviews done, no problem. That was a pretty normal thing that I do like every single day using Skritter. But I had to really make the energy and the effort to add new vocabulary and learn some new characters, which for me was the big additional point that I wanted to do in this challenge. I wanted to study more characters. I wanted to learn some more words, be a little bit more active in that process. And so I hit it 15.2 hours at the end, maybe a little bit more, because I did like go back in and do, my study flow every single day was like review my characters in the morning, find some time in the afternoon, maybe to learn some new items. And then I wanted to give myself a little bit of a break from SRS. So like these things are so new in your brain when you learn them. I could go and do the do cards right away, but I think it would be like too easy. I want to give myself a couple hours to like forget them potentially. So then at night before I went to bed, I would do my, any new cards that I studied for the day, I would clear those. So I think at the end, maybe it was like 15 and a half hours, but I was like right on target, and I just did exactly what I kind of needed to. I had a plan beforehand, and I just did everything in my power to execute on that. So yeah, that's how it went for me. How about yourself?
I worded my goal in 2 ways, and one of them was to spend 21 hours. And so that's about an hour per day. And for me, that's quite a lot. I mean, 1 hour effective time studying vocabulary is a lot. And the goal was to clear my queue, which was at 1,000 when we started. And I estimated that it would take around 21 hours, or I said that it's very likely that it will take something like that. And my estimate was pretty much spot on. I did finish a little bit early. So when there was maybe, when there were 5-6 days left in the challenge, I was very close to 0 because I spent a few hours extra. And then at that time, I had spent around 21 hours. And then since then, I spent like a week doing maintenance, only maybe 15-20 minutes per day. And now everything is down to some kind of spending only, 5 to 10 minutes per day. So I ended up finishing, I cleared the queue, and it took roughly about as much time as I thought. I spent 4 hours more than I said, but I mean, that's within a reasonable margin of error, I think. So yeah, it was very helpful for me. The accountability is very helpful here. Like I said what I would do in the video. I posted, I think I posted every day on Twitter. And I mean, I don't know, most people maybe, of course, they don't care that much and they don't check, hey, did he do what he said? But for me, it's like important. I've committed to doing it, and then it's so much more likely that I will actually do it.
Yeah, you seemed fairly active on Twitter, and it was very fun to see your progress. And I think, one thing that's very interesting about, like, you were really kind of spot on in your analysis of what it might take. And I think that's just something that maybe comes with experience, right? You've been learning Chinese for over 10 years. You've done these kinds of things before. As you said in the start of the challenge video, you knew roughly what to expect to, hey, I have 1,000 items due. This is likely going to take me about an hour a day to get down. Well done on that.
One thing that we should mention here is that when we talk about doing this type of sort of practice, or like focusing on vocabulary, we're not just mindlessly writing characters or something. I estimate that roughly half the time I spent was done on research or like looking things up, sorting out mistakes and things like that. There is actually a question from a participant about this specific thing, so maybe we can talk about it in a bit. But just to point this out, I spent 20-something hours, and most of that time is actually not with the vocabulary just reviewing. It's actually looking things up, learning more about the characters, sorting out, similar components or things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was the same way. So not all of my time was spent. I think I just looked back at my stats and I had, actually, let me pull this up live. Skritter wise, it reported that I studied, and so studying here, to be clear, in Skritter, we're currently tracking reviews only. That's what gets submitted to the server. And so I did 6 hours and 19 minutes and 16 seconds total for the month. And that's just clearing my queue every single day. For me, what I counted in terms of active vocabulary challenge was, so if I was going in and, I was studying a poem at the time and I nailed all those words, feel very comfortable with the poem, still working on memorizing the entire thing, but like I can read that poem, no problem now. So I went in and I added all those words to Skritter, right? I edited the definitions. When I was learning new words, I would look them up in Pleco or use Outlier or use Skritter's components. And I would edit some of them. I would edit my definitions. I would add some related words to my definitions. So all of that was part of my process. And then maybe every now and again, I would do like a test activity. And so the best thing for me to do when I was doing this challenge was I would use my watch and just start a timer and be like, okay, I'm just going to, kind of keep track in a more global sense. But on the Skritter side of things, review wise, it was about 6 hours and 20 minutes for the month of actually doing reviews and maintaining my queue and learning the new things and getting them into long-term memory.
Since we're already talking about it, why don't we move on to some questions and feedback from participants?
Sure.
And so the one we're talking about here is from Megan Aijan. This is not really a question, but it is a problem that she mentioned that I think everybody faces, and that is that she says that it's frustrating, or I was frustrated when I wasn't distinguishing some similarly shaped characters or like components of characters, and then getting them wrong because it requires a lot of extra effort. And this is something that I think is something that isn't clear really when you start learning Chinese, because learning each new character is difficult. But when maybe, I don't know exactly where the turning point is, but maybe when you learn, say, 1,000 characters or something, learning new characters is pretty easy. I mean, you can just look at it once, essentially, and you kind of remember it for a little while. The problem is keeping them apart.
Yes.
And then you have characters that have either the components can be visually similar. I mean, we all know about, say, 已经的已 and 自己的己.
Right, and
yeah, so they look the same, like visually similar but very different otherwise. And then of course there are, once you crack the code when it comes to, say, phonetic components, like components of characters that contribute sound to the character, there are of course some phonetic components that are pronounced the same, and there is no actual way of figuring out which is which. So there, for example, there are two biao, right? And they are both fairly common as phonetic components, and sometimes you mix up which one is which. And so what I've learned, you can't really, hammer these characters in. If you get it wrong and you just say, oh, I got it wrong, let's redo it. And you just, mindlessly you just review and redo the things until you think you remember them. The problem with that is that it will probably not work. It will work for a short while, but then you will mix it up again later or something.
Eventually you have to build the deeper connection than that, right?
Yeah, you have to do something. And that's why both Jake and I spend all this time, not just reviewing, but actually doing research at the same time. And research here just means looking things up. It's just a fancy way of learning more, essentially. So we're not just recalling old information, we're looking things up. And so I wrote an article, and it's available on both Hacking Chinese and the Skritter blog, where I traced errors. And what I do is essentially, I look at the error and I try to figure out, okay, so why did I make this mistake? And sometimes the answer is like, I just somehow didn't remember, I just drew a blank and I don't know why. That happens, and that's fine, just keep going. But oftentimes there is a clear reason why something went wrong, like I mixed up a component or something. And then it's important to kind of follow that path and see where it leads you. Like maybe you figure out that this component is very similar to another component, and that might look very obvious when you know about it in hindsight, that, okay, of course I mixed these up because I mixed this one up for that one, or
Mhm.
I mistook this component for another. But it's not very obvious if you see them, like if you see one of the characters 1 week and then 2 weeks later the other one comes around, you might not even notice that this is going on. And that can essentially create like a long loop where you have characters that you keep getting wrong over and over without really realizing it. And these types of characters, which they are normally called leeches, they take a lot of time. They kind of suck your blood out. And if you have enough of them, like even maintaining your vocabulary can take an awful lot of time and effort. So my suggestion here is to take the time. You will probably be, it will take longer. I spent, like I said, about half the time learning more things about the characters I had already learned once. So it could be like looking them up in context, see how they are used, learning more about their structure, how they are constructed. And like I said, drawing parallels with other characters that might be similar and trying to figure these things out.
Honestly, all the research out there right now indicates that this exploration, this deep exploration, these aha moments, taking the time to do analysis, it seems like a large upfront cost, but it actually reduces the long-term costs significantly. So when we do these things, we have to build these kinds of connections. And sometimes it does require stepping out a little bit and looking a little bit more abstractly and trying to go down that path and say, okay, really, why am I doing this? It's a thought experiment. And if you do this more and more and more, then this is how we master things. This is how we become an expert in literally anything that we're doing. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you got to go deep after doing this for over a decade, right? It's like, this is the way, this is the path toward excellence, toward mastery, toward perfection. You have to kind of sometimes just be hyper meticulous and say, why? Ask yourself why. And that process is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly important to building, our neural network and creating this.
Okay. So how about we move on to the next
question?
Yes,
let's move on. Absolutely.
So this one is for you, I think, Jake. So this is from Daniel Rich, and he's asking what you do if you have a very large number of due cards here. Mm-hmm. I had 1,000 writing cards, which is quite a lot, but mm-hmm. we're talking about much more than that. And if you're doing all the different things in Skritter you can do, if you're doing tones and reading and definition and so on, you can get to thousands, maybe even over 10,000 cards that you should have dealt with at some point, but you just haven't. And this, of course, this type of challenge is a nice way to do it, but it can also be very frustrating. And I know you made a video about this. So what's your advice here?
So my first piece of advice would be to go and check out the video. We'll have a link in the description below of it. I did actually a specific video for this very reason, how to clear a large queue, what you should do about it. One thing that I didn't mention in that video, and I think it might be very interesting, and we did hear from some other users that are trying this method, is what they found was a little bit more successful is because sometimes, like you said, the writing cards can be, those are the really tricky ones, right? Active recall on writing it's work, it's taxing on your brain. So what people found maybe to build a nice rhythm or momentum would be to go into the study queue. And when you're doing that, we have this review option screen that presents itself and you can actually turn cards on and off. So a lot of users found success with large queues by going, say, I'm going to start and I'm going to do all of my reading cards first, or all of my definition cards first, or all my tone cards first. And I'm going to get those done for the day. And then I'll move on to the writing, right? Build up this nice momentum, get my brain, nice and limber, a little bit of like a warm-up activity, and then go in and tackle the hard stuff. So that's one way you could do it. The other way that you can do it, and is a little bit, also available inside of Skritter specifically, but you can actually do deck by deck studying. So if you have a large queue of items and they're coming from, say, a bunch of things you've been studying for a very long time, you have like 20 decks in Skritter, 30 decks in Skritter, 40 decks in Skritter, prioritizing those decks that are important to you can be a great way. So you're just kind of consolidating down and saying, look, I want to learn from the HSK decks or whatever it is, and I'm going to start there. And once I'm done with those, then I'll move, on beyond that. So okay. I think that was one of our other users too. Like just a general comment was, don't take these challenges too seriously, have fun, like don't stress out, don't burn out. And absolutely, right.
It's a long term, like it's not 100-meter sprint learning Chinese. It's more like a marathon.
But maybe sometimes it feels like that prizes are on the line. You got the leaderboard, people are putting in insane study time. It can be a little challenging, and that's like a cool side, but like, generally speaking, I think it's important for us to all step back at the end and be like, our mental sanity is important. Like, let's make sure that we can maintain this for decades rather than just for a short sprint. Okay, one final question, and then we really need to move on here.
Yeah, it was from Pavel, and his question is, he's not sure how to grade himself when he's doing pronunciation prompts or tone prompts here, like opinion. And he basically says that he isn't sure what to do if he gets the opinion right, but the tone's wrong. Like if you get it partly, and maybe we can even expand this question in general, like what if you get some of the things right and some of the things wrong? So what do? Do you grade it as hard, and what does that mean? Or do you grade yourself as being wrong, and what's the difference?
I would be strict on myself and I would grade it as incorrect. If I got the reading wrong, and so I am presented with a opinion card, what's the reading, and I say the reading with the wrong tone, to me that is wrong, and it should just be graded as wrong. I think it might feel like, oh my gosh, my retention rate is suffering. But if you do this and you're strict enough on yourself and you force yourself to, your brain is going to adjust. You're going to learn this character better. You're going to be more accurate in the future, and you're going to actually review it less in the long term. So be stricter, I think, would be my word of advice. One thing that I learned from Scott Young's book, Ultra Learning, is he actually really highly encourages you to take a moment. If you're doing active recall, he's a huge fan of active recall. Everyone should be using active recall. Multiple choice is horrible for our memories, okay? So active recall is important. Skritter already does this. We don't even need to worry about that. But he does mention something in his book where when you see something, rather than snapping that button of like, just show me the answer already, take 5 or 10 seconds and really let your brain think. If you get something wrong, don't give yourself any leeway and be like, I knew it. No, you didn't. Mark it as wrong. You'll help yourself in the long run.
But when if it's something like not that important, or let's say you're doing a definition card and the question is, what does this mean? And you give like 2 out of 3, or you give like the main meaning, but you forget, that's fine. That's not.
You got that. You got it. I would say that is just I got it. I had no problem with that. Now, obviously, like you can focus on different kinds of things. If this is a word that you think like tomorrow I have a HSK exam and they're going to drill me on this alternative meaning for this character, then maybe that's a hard, maybe that's a forgot. But generally speaking, if you can reply, if you look at a word and you can give a definition for it, I would say that you know that word.
You wanted to say something about, engagement, social media. We had a couple of people who,
I want to say mad props,
more active than others.
Mad props to Megan over on Instagram. I had so much fun chatting with her back and forth. She was putting her study progress in the stories. I was like, it was so weird because, I was doing this. And so for myself, I did every single day. I kind of like did my thing. I tried to have this like new little character come in on my Instagram every single day. I had like an owl in there. I had like Boba Fett. Like I was just having a blast with this thing. It was super fun. But Megan was sharing her progress in her stories, and genuinely like this community challenge, when she posted her final day, she had a story of like, and I finished my queue. I was so happy for her. I was just so happy. It was so cool. We don't see this kind of engagement that much on Skritter, and I think like we can do a better job on Skritter of making this easier to share on social media. But like genuinely speaking, I love seeing this stuff. So Megan, Lingophiles on Instagram, check her out. She was awesome. Like mad props to you. Juan Diego, he was on Twitter every single day posting these insane stats. I remember for him, he hit his goal of 30 hours and he said, I've still got like a couple days left. I'm bumping it to 40. And I'm pretty sure he hit that goal too. I don't have it right in front of me, but like Juan Diego, gongsi. And then Michael F as well. Mad props to him. He was on Twitter. He was chatting back and forth with us. He was throwing out his stats every single day, and I think he had a lot of fun. So these 3 in particular, I really thought did a fantastic job of. I mean, it felt fun. I was rooting for them the entire time. I was rooting for everybody the entire time. I think at the end, I really tried to go in for everybody's feed, and I just looked and like I was so impressed with everyone's progress and how they reported it. So I was trying to like cheer on at the finish line and just like it was a very fun way to recap the challenge for me. So social media engagement, including all of the comments on your your own challenge, Ulla. Like, I think that ability to report hours and minutes, but also talk about what you're doing. I had some great conversations over the course of the challenge. I wanted to show up every day. And I think that that was the critical element of this social media engagement. So
yeah, and for other challenges, not maybe vocabulary, but say next month's challenge. Sorry, this month's challenge is November already.
I wore my
reading,
I
right?
have no shelf control shirt specifically because your challenge is going to be on reading. I'm so stoked. I signed up. I'm doing 10 hours. I can't wait. It's going to be a blast.
So reading is nice. And then you should pay attention to the feed because, I mean, maybe not you because you have stuff to read, but if you're like a beginner or an intermediate learner, you can see what other people are reading because they mention what they're reading in their comments.
Awesome.
So you can see like, oh, someone is checking this out. That's interesting.
Awesome.
I want to know more about that. And
Awesome.
you can learn a lot about what people are doing. So that's nice.
Okay, so we have two final things and then we need to close out and announce our winners. We're just dragging the winners all the way to the very end here. But okay, so let's just quickly contrast this, like regular routine versus binge catch-up studying. Ulla, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I did kind of did binge catch-up studying here, and you did more the regular routine, although of course you also added new words and so on. But I think everybody kind of knows that ideally you should never have to do binge studying of any kind. I mean, all the research shows that, yeah, it works short term. So if you have an exam, cram, that definitely works. But if you're going for the long run, and we are doing a marathon here, not a 100-meter sprint, so it's so much easier to do the routine if you can get it. If you can get into the habit of doing it, say, for a certain amount of time before getting out of bed, and maybe for a certain amount of time before you fall asleep. I mean, you have it done. You don't have to worry about it throughout the rest of the day and so on. So for me, just to give people some kind of idea how it works here. So I spent, an average of about 1 hour per day catching up. It's not extreme. It's not like some people in the challenge we've seen that spent maybe 3 or 4 times more than I did overall. But it's still like substantial. But now that I've just cleared the queue, I'm down to not even 10 minutes per day. And spending, 5-10 minutes per day every day is so much nicer than spending hours per day for a substantial amount of time to clear the queue. So it's a little bit of a no-brainer, maybe, that regular routine is so nice, but I think that this kind of challenge is nice because it also, of course, it's a nice opportunity to binge catch up if you have to. But it's also a nice way to establish habits. Like maybe 21 days is not like really enough, and you need to maintain it. But yeah, that's my take on it. And it's kind of a little bit of work on those habits. Habits are really important for getting things done, especially long-term things like this.
All right, so I just pulled up my Skritter stats for a year, and I have studied 328 days of the year, and I have averaged 10 minutes per day. I mean, I don't think I need to say much more than that. I have a 97.5% retention rate. Granted, I've been studying Chinese for almost 15 years. I'm not really spending too much time trying to learn new things. I am very much making an active approach these days. 2020 for me is kind of, it's me getting back in the mix. It's me kind of reassessing my priorities, setting new goals. And I'm going to talk a lot more about that on the YouTube channel coming up in the future, because it really has been a very different year for me in terms of that. But generally speaking, I show up every single day. I do this in the morning with my coffee. I bake it into my app testing, but I have coffee and I do Skritter, and after 10 minutes, I'm done. And then at night is generally when I do my learning of new things. I don't want to tax my brain too much before I have to go to work. I take my job very seriously, and I don't want to get sucked into my own personal stuff. That's for me. That's what I do before and after work. But I do 10 minutes a day, and I don't even have to think about it. It's just a part of my day. If I wake up and don't do it, I feel
that's the power, right, of habits.
Yeah, it really is. And so it's to the point now where when I wake up and that doesn't happen, it feels like an off day as opposed to the alternative, right? So that's and that's, I think, the cool thing about these challenges is maybe we can. So I'm really excited about the reading challenge, because what I'm hoping that it does is it also helps me build that positive habit. It takes about 19-20 days to build a habit for anything. So I'm hoping that reading becomes an actual daily daily active habit for me as well in Chinese. So I'm super excited for the 10th when this starts so that I can start doing that. And I've been doing more and more of it, but like I want to do even more. I want to make it so that maybe 10 minutes a day is spent on Skritter, 10 to 15 minutes a day are spent on reading, doing some podcasts, whatever it is, but like find that healthy hour that I can spend on Chinese. And I know that by the end of a year, right, my language skills are going to be so much better.
Yeah, so James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, I can't really quote him here because I don't remember exactly, but the idea is that habits are like the compound interest of learning.
Yes.
So if you have the habits down, you just let time pass and everything kind of just solves itself, right? You just learn more automatically or without spending that much effort.
And then every now and again, you hit the gym or hire a coach to work on something very specific. And that's the beauty of your challenges specifically. So let's reward some people who showed up, did some vocabulary, and crushed it this month. Olle, drum roll, please. What do we got, man? 3 Skritter subscriptions worth 6 months of study time. Who are our winners?
Okay, so winner number 1 is Canis, who actually also placed number 1, although this is randomly determined, so it doesn't. Or wait, did he actually?
No, he was number 2. He was number 2.
Number 2. Sorry, he was
Larry.
number 1
Larry had 109 hours. He made a push at the end to actually beat. It was like down to the wire at the end. These 2 guys were duking it out. It was awesome to see. They're both study machines. Props to both of them. Canis, congratulations, man.
So number 2 is Sandy Langs.
Yay! Congratulations.
Yay! And
I think
third. Okay.
I think Willem can cut some drum rolls in as B-roll, Olle.
Sure.
All right. Anyways, who do we got?
Yeah. So number 3, the third winner is Estefania, who had a total of almost 36 hours.
Yay!
So congratulations, everybody, and really well done. We are impressed.
Absolutely. I think that Skritter is going to be, we're going to try and be as involved in this kind of a challenge as we can moving forward. This was a lot of fun for us. I think there's going to be more opportunities. And really, this has inspired me to try and figure out some ways that we can do something similar on the Skritter side of things. So, stay tuned. Congratulations to all of you for winning these prizes. Olle, I think you'll be in touch. Like, I'll work with you and we'll figure this out. Any kind of closing thoughts here, Olle?
Yeah, see you in the reading challenge, which starts on November 10th.
All right. Thank you very much, Olle, for joining me again today. Look forward to having you back on the channel in the future to talk about habits and other kind of things. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we will catch you on the next one. 下次再见. Peace.